Hi, I'm Holly. I used to think families fall apart slowly, little cracks, quiet distance, but mine shattered in one message. My husband wrote, "We voted she stays." He left our 9-year-old behind like she was luggage, and when I thought it couldn't get worse, the pilot called him. That's when I learned the truth wasn't left on the ground. It was flying straight back toward me. The airport smelled like coffee and damp clothes. It always did in summer, thick with sweat and recycled air. I stood just a few feet from the boarding gate at Dallas-Fort Worth, watching the blur of my family in motion, my sister juggling snacks, my mother fussing over her carry-on, Mark with his phone glued to his hand like it was oxygen. Lucy, my daughter, gripped her stuffed bear tighter than usual. She hadn't said much all morning, not since Mark snapped at her for kicking the back of his seat in the car. 9 years old and already learning to keep quiet around the people who should have made her feel safest. "You always make things complicated, Holly," my mother said, brushing past me like I was in the way. Her words landed soft, but they carried weight. I didn't respond. That's how it always went. Let the silence speak louder than whatever petty jab she thought I deserved. Mark barely looked up from his screen. I could have been a stranger at the gate. Maybe I was. Maybe I'd been one for a long time and just didn't notice. The boarding call came over the speakers. Families moved. Wheels rolled. Mark took Lucy's hand for a second, then let go. My sister waved me forward. "You coming?" "Yeah," I said, but I stayed back to tie my shoelace. That's when I felt the buzz. A text from Mark. 3 words. "We voted she stays." I looked up. The gate door closed like a steel jaw. The flight crew pulled the latch. Lucy wasn't next to them. I turned around. She stood behind me, bear in hand, looking lost. I ran. Didn't think. Just ran to the counter, breath caught in my throat. "I need to get on that plane. My husband and family just boarded." "I'm sorry, ma'am. The gate's already sealed." "But my daughter, she's with me. They left her. The agent hesitated. She glanced at her screen. "They boarded as a group. 4 adults, 3 children. You're not listed." I stared past her, out the window. The plane began to move. "They left without me. On purpose." The agent blinked, unsure if she should speak. That silence, the kind where no one wants to touch what's too raw to handle, it wrapped around me like cold fog. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I stood still. How many of them agreed to this? How many nodded their heads and said, "Yeah, she should stay"? My husband, my sister, my mother, all of them. Lucy tugged on my hand. Her voice was small. "Mommy, where are they going?" "They're taking a different trip," I said, kneeling to her level. "One they didn't invite us on." Tears welled in her eyes. I wiped them away and pulled her close. "It's okay, baby. We're going home." I felt the stares. Passengers who heard, who watched. A woman near the vending machine mouthed something to her friend. A man pulled out his phone like he was documenting a zoo exhibit. Mark had upgraded to first class. That's what the gate agent said when she double-checked. "They requested the change at check-in," she said quietly. "They said you weren't coming." I closed my eyes. That wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of confusion or miscommunication. It was a decision. A plan. Not forgotten. Erased. I straightened up, held Lucy's hand, walked away. Near the baggage claim, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Ma'am, this is Captain Anders from American Airlines Flight 247 to Seattle. I overheard some things before we took off. I probably shouldn't be calling, but something felt wrong." My grip on the phone tightened. "What did you hear?" "Just, your husband. He said it was easier this way, and he paid for everyone's upgrade using the same card. I thought you should know." I exhaled, slow and measured. "You're the first person who didn't treat me like I deserved this." "I'm sorry. Truly." I hung up. Lucy had fallen asleep in the back seat of the car, bear pressed against her cheek. I drove in silence. The kind of silence that fills your bones, not empty, but loaded. At a red light, I looked into the rearview mirror. My own eyes stared back, tired, yes, but not broken. "If they voted," I whispered, "so will I." The house felt smaller than I remembered. Quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that seeps into your bones and reminds you of everything that's missing. I unlocked the door with Lucy leaning against my hip, half asleep, her bear hanging by one arm. We stepped inside, and I shut it behind us, more slowly than I needed to. I didn't turn on the lights right away. There was something honest in the dark. Lucy sat at the kitchen table while I made her a grilled cheese, her favorite when the world didn't make sense. I stirred soup that I knew she'd barely touch, and I smiled when she looked up at me, trying to read my face like it held answers. When people are gone long enough, I muttered under my breath, you start making up reasons for them, just so it doesn't hurt as much. She fiddled with her spoon. Mom, did I do something wrong? I knelt next to her, brushing her bangs aside. No, sweetheart. Some grown-ups, they just don't grow right. She didn't cry. Neither did I. Yet there was a shared understanding in that moment that neither of us should have had to reach so early or so alone. I tucked her into bed with her bear tucked under her arm. She asked if Daddy was still on the plane. I said yes, that's all I could manage. I stood in the hallway after closing her door, staring at the crooked family portrait still hanging above the light switch. I left it crooked. I wasn't sure I wanted to remember the version of us it tried to portray. In the living room, I turned on my laptop out of habit more than need. The blue glow lit up the room, bouncing off empty frames and unread mail. I opened the family group chat. Nothing recent. I clicked deeper, past the most recent messages, into the cloud backup we all forgot was linked. There it was, a deleted message, time-stamped just hours before the flight. From Mark's phone. Let's all agree, Holly won't make this trip messy. Below that, a thread of agreements. My sister-in-law chimed in. She's too emotional for travel anyway. Mark added a thumbs up. They didn't vote about Lucy. They voted about me. They'd planned the whole thing, behind my back, like I was a liability they needed to quarantine. I read it again. Then again. It wasn't just exclusion. It was orchestration. They didn't just forget me. They erased me. They didn't leave my daughter, I said aloud to no one. They staged a mutiny. Then, a knock at the door. It was nearly 10 p.m. I checked the peephole. Helen, my neighbor. Early 70s. Gray bun. Wore a cardigan like armor. I opened it. She stepped in without asking. I won't stay long, she said. Your sister called. Earlier today. Said she was worried you might, that you might act out. Asked me to check in, just in case. I didn't blink. I didn't ask which sister. It didn't matter. They think I'm unstable, I said. Helen's face softened. I told her you were the calmest one in this whole block. Always have been. Thanks for stopping by, I said, politely but firmly. She lingered for a second, like she wanted to say more, then left with a small nod. I locked the door. Then unplugged the landline. That was the moment something shifted. Not just in the room, in me. I sat down at my old desk, covered in dusty folders from vacations I once planned, flights I researched, hotels I booked, memories I organized like a secretary no one thanked. I pulled out the itinerary for last year's trip to Colorado, the one I rearranged after Mark forgot to renew his passport. I stared at it. I'd spent years folding myself into their convenience, canceling things, rearranging things, making sure everyone had what they needed. And they paid me back by voting me out. I whispered, maybe it's not about being excluded. Maybe it's about not wanting in anymore. I opened the family calendar app, hit delete. Then the shared location tracking. Off. The family photo on my desk. I didn't smash it. I didn't throw it. I simply turned it down, face to wood, out of sight. I walked to my room, turned off the lamp, and sat on the edge of the bed. This wasn't the sound of breaking. It was the sound of someone choosing silence. And before I lay down, I whispered to the dark, let's see how well they travel without the one who always packed. Morning rose in soft, pale light through the blinds. I woke before Lucy, the house quiet enough to hear my own heart open and close. I sat up, stared at the ceiling, imagining the faces that voted me out. On my phone, a new email from Curtis. Subject: We need to talk. I swallowed. He was Mark's brother, always polite, neutral. Until today. I opened it, screenshots, chat logs, justifications, and one line. She's too dramatic to co-parent. I read it twice, then shut my eyes. Lucy padded into the room, clutching her math homework. Her hair was a mess, eyes still sleepy. Mom, can we do fractions? Her voice shook me back into the moment. Okay, I said. Let's work on them together. She climbed into bed beside me, spread out her worksheet. While she solved a few problems, I watched her little fingers trace numbers. I thought, they didn't just abandon our trip. They framed me as unstable to feel better about leaving. Later, I drove Lucy to school. The radio said something about flights delayed. My mind replayed the image of the plane pulling away without us. At the school drop-off line, I ran into Denise, a neighbor I see at PTA meetings. She smiled, oblivious. So how was the trip? I forced a quiet laugh. They left early. Lucy had a stomach bug. She nodded sympathetically and walked off. I watched her go, then stepped back, feeling the shame coil around me. Not shame of being left, shame of hiding it. Maybe what stings more than exclusion is pretense. That afternoon, I walked into the old bakery we used to frequent as a family. The bell chimed. I scanned the room. Nothing familiar except the counter and the aroma of fresh bread. I ordered Mark's usual coffee, a tall black cup, no cream. I paid, accepted it, and sat without drinking a drop. I opened my phone and snapped a photo of the untouched cup, then texted Mark. Thought I'd remind you what silence tastes like. He read it. No reply. Blue check. I allowed myself a small, bitter smile. Not revenge, a nudge. Then the phone rang. School administrator. Lucy had an emotional outburst in class. I raced there, abandoning my purse, keys on the table. At the door, I grabbed Lucy's moss-green backpack that had been tucked behind her chair. Her teacher said Lucy had cried when she was asked to join the group for pictures. Some classmates asked where I was. She couldn't, or wouldn't, answer. I held her, whispered she was safe now. Later that evening, I sat on the porch with the bag in my lap. I looked at the empty streets, thinking how real strength sometimes begins in silence. I whispered to myself, they'll see. They'll all see what happens when the one who packs the bag stops being invited. I spent most of the afternoon holed up in the study, door half shut, Lucy napping on the couch. The light outside was beginning to fade, casting long, stretched shadows across the floorboards. I reopened the folder Curtis had sent, screenshots, timestamps, and careless words that now weighed like bricks on my chest. I clicked through old emails, searching for something I didn't know I was looking for. Something felt off. Then I saw it. A sent folder I'd never used, hidden, buried under layers of nested tags. Inside, one document stood out. Parental Authorization PDF. I opened it. My name sat at the bottom, neat and precise in signature. But it wasn't my hand. I've signed 1,000 field trip slips, tax forms, greeting cards. This wasn't me. The document granted temporary custody to Blaze, my sister, for the duration of family travel, dated 3 days before they booked their tickets. I checked my calendar. That was the same week I was buried planning Lucy's birthday, juggling cupcake orders and last-minute RSVPs. They'd waited until I was busy loving my daughter to plan how to leave her behind. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Just sat there, staring at the lie made legal. They didn't just outvote me. They erased me with a stroke. Lucy's voice broke the silence. Mom, when's Daddy gonna call? I turned slowly in my chair, forcing a smile. Soon, baby. She nodded, trusting me, and walked back to the couch with her little bear. I turned back to the screen. The war didn't end at the gate. It came home with us. I kept digging. Old shared drives, backup archives. That's when I found it. Final Will Edit Doc X. It was a version of the family trust, dated just 5 weeks earlier. The original listed me as co-beneficiary for the emergency fund. The edited version removed my name entirely, replaced with Blaze and Mark's mother. My name was gone, like I'd never existed. I right-clicked, checked the file info, last edited on a Thursday night, right around the time I remember Odessa calling me about Lucy's asthma meds. She'd asked how we were planning for the future. They'd been planning, all right, but not with me in it. I sat there, frozen, betrayal layered deep. Not just about a trip, not just about a vote. They rewrote the story, line by line, until I was a footnote. A liability. I didn't throw the laptop. I didn't scream. I opened a video call with my attorney instead, told her everything. She took notes quietly, asked for copies, promised we'd begin with the forged custody form. Then I opened a blank email draft, addressed it to Blaze, CC'd Odessa, no subject line, just a blank space staring at me. I started to write, then deleted every word. I wasn't ready to ask them anything. I wanted them to wonder when I would. A ping from Lucy's school broke my focus. A class photo posted on their social page, smiling kids at the zoo. Lucy stood off to the side. I wasn't in the caption, no tag, no mention, just a missing piece. I clicked comment. Didn't sign my name. Missing parts of a family don't always get forgotten. Then I closed the page. They'd lit a fire. They just didn't expect me to learn how to burn steady. Night crept in. The hallway dimmed, and the doorbell rang. Once. Firm, not urgent. I opened halfway. Curtis stood there, holding an envelope. No smile, no greeting. He looked at me and said, "I don't want to choose sides." But he already had. He handed me the envelope with my name on it, sealed in ink. Afternoon light drifted in through the curtains, casting soft shadows across my living room. I sat still, documents spread over the coffee table, the forged signatures, copied wills, recordings from Quenby. My fingers traced lines I didn't believe existed. The quiet weighed heavier each minute. Lucy walked in, backpack slung over one shoulder, cheeks flushed. She held up the class photo. "Mom, why weren't you in this picture?" she asked. My throat tightened. I mustered the gentlest tone I had left. "Because sometimes people make decisions you don't know about," I said. "But you'll always be in the moments that matter." She nodded, small and trusting. I glanced toward the moss-green bag she'd left on the floor. It was familiar, battered, carrying years of her life. It sat there like a ghost of better times. I used to think silence kept peace. Now I know it's the weapon they use. My phone buzzed. I picked it up, half dreading. The message? "I've always known something was off. I can help you. Name? Quenby Vale." Another line came. "I have recordings. Conversations they never meant me to hear." Relief, razor sharp, cut through me. Doubt followed. Could I trust her? Betrayal had taught me caution. I typed, "Why tell me now?" Her reply, "Because I can't live with their lies anymore." Morning came with new battle lines. I opened my email to see a note from Lucy's school. They were questioning if I was even allowed to pick her up. I drove there immediately. In the office, Sabrina, the administrator, looked up coldly. She slid over a sheet. My name, removed from the approved pickup list. "You received instructions," she said, voice level. "Who sent them?" I asked, steady. She shrugged. "We don't have clearance to say." I felt the isolation tighten. They were cutting me off, one small corner at a time. That evening, I drove to Quenby's house. She met me at the door, eyes wary. She led me inside, locked it behind us, and turned on her laptop. We listened, her voice trembling. Quenby played recordings of family dinners, Blaze and Odessa's voices, plotting how to exclude me. Dates, names, intent. It was their plan exposed in raw audio. I recorded Quenby reading the transcripts aloud, line by line. I confirmed my husband's voice. Each sentence lowered a barrier. "We leak this to Malis Keene tomorrow," I said. "She's the one who can't be bought." I packed a final message in my mind. A thought that echoed. I no longer ask, I assert. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Blaze. "Stop playing detective. It's exhausting." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back calmly. "Try telling that to Lucy." The house was quiet except for the hum of the laptop fan. I'd been staring at the same screen for an hour, the cursor blinking at the edge of my draft like it was daring me to keep going. The cup from the cafe sat cold beside me, untouched since the morning. I couldn't bring myself to dump it out. Maybe because it reminded me of the last time I thought things were still fixable. I gathered everything across the table. Copies of forged authorizations, the fake will, Quenby's recordings labeled with neat little timestamps. Each piece was a weapon, if used right. I'd gone from being someone they thought would fold under pressure to someone who now calculated every move. If they think I can be gaslit back into silence, I murmured, they're wrong. The words came out steady, not angry, just final. I opened a blank document and started writing drafts. Letters, statements, versions of truth I might release. Some were calm and factual, others burned. I didn't send any of them. And not yet. The power wasn't in sending. It was in knowing I could. That quiet power followed me the next morning when I walked through the front doors of Blaze's law firm. The place hadn't changed, sleek, self-assured, smelling faintly of expensive coffee and fear. I told the receptionist I needed clarification on a custody matter. Her smile was all practiced politeness, but I could see the flicker in her eyes when she heard my name. Please have a seat, Mrs. Vale. Someone will be right with you. I didn't sit. I'll wait by the records room, I said. That earned me a full stop. Security shifted by the elevator. Ma'am, that area's not accessible. It is, I cut in, to the plaintiff whose name is on every one of those files you've been hiding. The two guards exchanged a look. I could tell they weren't used to a woman walking in calm, but ready to detonate. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence did the work for me. A junior associate appeared, 20-something, nervous, holding a tablet like a shield. Mrs. Vale, maybe we can talk in here, he said, gesturing to a conference room. Inside, the air was too cold. He kept glancing at the door. You're the one who prepared my file, I said. The one with the fake authorization and will, right? He froze. I was told it was an internal draft. I didn't know. Don't, I interrupted. You printed it. You put it in my folder. You knew. His jaw trembled. They said you'd never find out. Well, I said, leaning forward, I tend to find things. For a moment, all I heard was the ticking of the wall clock. Then he whispered, They told me to do it quietly. And that's exactly how it ends, I replied. I stood, collected the papers from the table, and walked out before he could find another excuse. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had turned to ice. My phone vibrated as I shut the door behind me, an unknown number again. The message read, We have your backup drive. You have 24 hours to retract. I didn't even need to trace it. The number was familiar. Ivara Black, the college student I'd hired to watch Lucy some evenings. I felt the air in the room tighten. I opened my laptop, ran a trace anyway, and there it was, her IP address tied to the firm's network. I replayed a memory, the night I'd come home early and found her quickly minimizing a window on my computer. I'd brushed it off. Trusted too quietly. I said it out loud this time. I trusted too quietly. They wanted me to panic. Instead, I went to the drawer, pulled out a small recorder, and played the short clip I'd saved weeks ago. Ivara's voice gossiping on a call, bragging about running errands for Blaze's office, her own words, her own rope. I smiled for the first time that day, not out of joy, but control. I didn't strike back immediately. Patience, I realized, was my sharpest weapon. That evening, I drafted one email, addressed to Blaze and Odessa both. Subject line, You have until tomorrow. I expose everything. I wrote one line inside, nothing more. You taught me to play quiet. I learned to play strategic. Then, below it, I added one detail that only Ivara and I knew. A harmless piece of information, but enough to prove I held her secrets too. I saved it, sealed it, and timed it to send the next morning. When I stepped outside, the night was colder than I expected. The street lights glowed pale against the dark sky. I took a long breath, the kind that steadies you before the next round. For once, I didn't feel like prey. I felt prepared. Hours later, close to midnight, my phone buzzed again. The message came with no name, just words that cut clean through the dark. You think you're ready. See you at the hearing. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could almost hear Blaze's voice in the phrasing, that smug certainty. I exhaled, slow and deliberate, then typed back, "I've already arrived." I settled into the courthouse waiting area long before my hearing. My documents lay flat on my lap, printed audio transcripts, copies of false signatures, annotated timelines. Every betrayal replayed in my mind. The altered will, the school purge, Ivara's secret messages. The hum of murmured conversations in the hall tested my calm. I texted Lucy one line, "Be brave for me tonight." I stared at my reflection in a window. The woman I saw was tired, but resolute. Tonight, I thought, I won't ask for mercy. I'll demand truth. When the hearing began, the courtroom's air felt too thin. The judge listened to Blaze's attorney argue that the forged authorization was inadmissible because of chain of custody issues. My evidence, he claimed, might have been tampered with. My heart sank. The judge's gavel tapped. He ruled I'd need an expert forensic report before they would even let me present the rest. The room stilled. Faces shifted. My stomach knotted. Inside, it felt like a punch, but I kept my lips pressed. I nodded, cautious. Then, before I could stand to speak, the clerk announced a tape would be played, confidential, submitted ahead of time. A hush fell. The audio started. Quenby's voice, steady but trembling, describing how Odessa and Blaze planned to erase me from the narrative. They spoke names, dates, intentions. Odessa gasped. Blaze's face drained of color. My chest tightened. Fierce vindication mingled with grief. I closed my eyes, held the moment. Then I rose. "You've made this court the stage for your family drama," I said, voice quiet but steady. "I ask only that you see the truth." Silence stretched. The sound of breathing, mine, theirs, filled the room. The clerk's tape had cracked open their fortress. In the corridors after, the courtroom doors spilled into chaos. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing. They asked me, "Do you feel vindicated?" I looked at them evenly. "I just feel heard." Quenby appeared beside me and hugged me tight. I whispered, "We're not done yet." I walked outside into the late light, grabbing my moss-green bag from the car seat. It belonged to me now, fully reclaimed. Then my phone chimed. A text from a blocked number. "They're filing countercharges for defamation. You have 12 hours. My thumb hovered before typing back. "I'll see you in your next deposition." I entered the family law office late afternoon. The fluorescent lights made everything feel sharper, harsher. My lawyer was already at the conference table, papers spread out like plans of war. He told me Blaze's team had filed counterclaims, defamation, and custodial interference. Their goal was clear: scare me into silence, stall the case, shift the narrative. I leaned over the documents, tracking inconsistencies, dates that didn't match, signatures from unknown sources, chain of custody gaps. He suggested we argue pattern over incident. Show this was ongoing manipulation, not a one-time lapse. I nodded. I said, "Let them come. We'll go all the way." Later that evening, an email from Lucy's school lit up my inbox. The principal had reviewed security footage I'd requested. I watched, heart thumping. There was Odessa, picking Lucy up early on a school day, no record, no authorization. I forwarded the clip immediately to our legal team. My hands didn't shake as I walked into the school the next morning, confronted the counselor. "This child's safety isn't optional," I told her. She stuttered. I held steady. Their walls were cracking. That night, I sat in my apartment. My phone glowed with a new document leak. Blaze was seeking emergency custody, claiming I was emotionally unstable, fueling Lucy's paranoia, endangering her sense of safety. I didn't panic. I gathered emails, therapist notes, letters from friends, character references. Before bed, I kissed Lucy's forehead and said softly, "Sometimes people try to win by breaking your peace. Let's not give them ours." Later, I walked the dim hallway of my apartment. I opened a box of childhood keepsakes. In my hands, a faded note from my mother. "You were always the one who stayed." I let tears fall quietly. Then I burned the emergency petition in a glass dish, watching the edges curl, knowing the pain it represented. After, I opened my laptop and began typing an open letter. This is what a mother looks like. As I closed the document and saved it, my phone flashed. A message. Lucy's not at school. We can't locate her. Aiken. The courtroom was silent when I stepped in, filled with people who knew my name but didn't know my story. Blaze sat across the aisle, his posture rigid, his attorney beside him whispering. The judge looked down from the bench, papers spread wide. I had submitted every piece of evidence: school footage, therapist statements, recordings. The patchwork of lies turned visible. Blaze's attorney rose and made a final attempt. Paint me as someone led by emotion, not reason. Try to twist compassion into instability. The courtroom took a breath. I sat back. Then I stood. It's not about anger, I said, voice steady. It's about what she needs. During cross-examination, Blaze lost control. He blurted out that he'd planned to relocate Lucy without court approval. That moment was a collapse, his carefully constructed facade cracking. The room froze. The judge's expression changed. That speaks volumes, the judge said. Blaze's face reddened. He tried to recover, stuttered. The ground shifted beneath his arguments. Relief washed me. Not triumph, but validation. Then came the verdict. The judge granted me full physical custody and joint legal custody under strict terms. Odessa was barred from contact for 1 year. His words hung. This child deserves peace, and someone who chooses her daily. I turned toward Lucy. Tears brimmed. Not fear, but gratitude. She walked forward, enveloped me in her arms, and I held her like I never would let go. The courtroom's tension dissolved in the softness of that embrace. Outside, neighbors quietly applauded from doorways. At home, Lucy stuck a note on the fridge. We are the home now. I made tea. She sat at the kitchen table doing homework. I watched her, steady and secure. We spoke of planting a garden together. New life from this ground. The quiet in the house was no longer absence, but presence. Weeks later, Lucy and I drove to a lake I visited as a child. The water still shimmered under the evening sky. We stood on the shore, folded a paper boat, and wrote inside, "You were always the one who stayed." Lucy asked if she'd ever forgive Blaze. I said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean waiting for them to change. It means I choose to be better myself." We let the boat float, skipping stones across the surface. Some endings aren't clean, but they can still be whole, and if anyone asks, tell them we stayed.